To Libya now, and there are concerns that ISIL militants are returning to their former stronghold, the eastern city of Sirte. Libya's eastern forces recently launched airstrikes on ISIL fighters south and east of the city. The militant group has reportedly been setting up checkpoints nearby, attacking local forces and taking over mosques in nearby villages. The increased activity has raised concerns that ISIL may be planning to regroup around Sirte. Libya's eastern forces liberated the city from ISIL in December with support from U.S. airstrikes. Let's get you more perspective on that story, and I'm joined from our Johannesburg studios by Naim Gina. He's the director of the Afro-Middle East Center. Naim, thank you for joining us here on the program. So what's your take, though, on these reports that ISIL is returning to Sirte?
I don't put much stock in that. Let's just say first that the issue of the Islamic State group in Libya has been used by both of the so-called governments in Libya in order to support their own strikes or whatever it might be in those areas. And once again, I think that that's the case. ISIS in Libya itself has been virtually decimated. There certainly are maybe a few dozen of its fighters still remaining, not very organized. And ISIS, in terms of its structure, its headquarters based in Syria, they're not making any call, for example, for fighters to go to Libya. They make a call for fighters to go to Marawi in the Philippines, but not to Libya. So Libya has for their head office, their headquarters in Syria, Libya has kind of fallen off the radar, and that's because they virtually don't exist. So there might be one or two incidents that take place, but nothing that suggests a kind of resurgence of ISIS in Libya.
So ISIL may have been decimated in Libya, though, but it is still believed that ISIL is still somehow making North Africa its new stronghold following its losses in Iraq and Syria. But now that Libya is divided and arguably doesn't have the capacity to deal with a full-blown ISIL insurgency, what happens there? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, firstly, as I said, there's not going to be a full-blown ISIS insurgency. Secondly, in fact, Libya was much more divided when ISIS in Libya and Derna, Sirte, etc. was in its heyday. Now it's less divided than it was then. You now have two main forces, kind of fighting against each other, but two main forces that have consolidated both in terms of personnel but also in terms of territory. The one being the government in the west, based in Tripoli, the government of national accord, which is the internationally recognized government, and the other being the government of the so-called House of Representatives, with the army there led by the General Khalifa Haftar. Haftar has taken over all of the territory that was previously controlled by ISIS. Haftar is known to be quite brutal and has ensured that there won't be a resurgence of ISIS. So I think that we're not, firstly, that as I say, Libya is less divided than it was during ISIS' heyday. We're not going to see a resurgence of ISIS taking place there now. And the armed forces, the two opposing Libyan armed forces, will ensure that that doesn't happen.
So let's look at the presence of ISIL in other countries such as Iraq and Syria, though, and we've seen global powers getting together there to battle ISIL. Do those powers have the same commitment in the fight against the group if it does take a hold in North African countries?
Well, I think if it does take a hold in North African countries, and really you're looking at Libya being the main possibility, Mali not so much, none of the other countries. I mean, you have a cell in Algeria which now and then does one or other thing, but that is being infiltrated. We've had in the past some attacks in Tunisia. That has disappeared as well. In general, ISIS is really on the back foot. They've lost all their territory really in Iraq. They've lost most of the territory they controlled in Syria, and they're confined to parts of two cities, one of which now is almost definitely completely lost, and the other which will be lost in the next month or two. They have some activity in Marawi in the Philippines, but that also they now squeezed into a small territory, and that's going to be over soon. So there really isn't much potential for ISIS moving forward, and certainly North Africa is not on their map for resurgence or for a relocation of their fighters or anything like that.
All right, Naim Gina joining us there from Johannesburg.